Okay, it's time for a little story time because there's a subject that I want to bring up and I just want to give an example of it. Superficiality leads to blindness. That's what I'm going to call this one. Superficiality leads to blindness. Now, all of us know the definition of superficiality. Everybody knows what it's like. Superficiality is associated with materialism in a lot of cases. And that's just basically looking at the book and not looking at the contents. That's basically what superficiality is. You've created a whole idea of what a person is about by just the way they look at that moment in time that you look at them. You see this person is dirty and unkempt in their work uniform and you figure that they're a bum. No, they're dirty and unkempt because maybe they haul garbage for a living. Maybe because they do construction for a living. But it is assumed because they're dirty and unkempt at the time that you see them, because they could be just getting off work. At the time that you see them, you assume that they're a bum. Things like that. So I'm going to tell you guys a little story about superficiality because this goes a little bit deeper than the outside. A lot of people, and I mentioned before, will measure a person's value based on their pocketbook, based on their financial situation. Now, once upon a time, and I mentioned to you a while back that I worked for a company that provided jobs for people with special needs, okay? And it was the midnight shift. Well, over a period of time, a lot of the jobs that we had in that particular department were based on government contracts. And a lot of you familiar with government contracts, you can understand that it could be kind of tricky. And a lot of those contracts have a certain time period, and then once it's done, it's either done or you go back to the negotiating table and you set up a new deal. One of the two. Well, one of the major contracts that we had decided to pull out and go with another vendor. So what they had to do, trickle-down theory, because we were missing that revenue of that, they had to look at the 3 shifts and decided which one they were going to keep. So they cut labor. And in a lot of businesses, they do that. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens. So because I was working the 3rd shift, we had the least amount of people. Even though we produced, they couldn't relocate all of us. I believe there was 14 or 15 of us. They couldn't relocate all of us to the previous 2 shifts because they were already almost full, so they decided to let some of us go, and I was one of them. Now, during that time, I was dating a gentleman, and we seemingly had a good time, and we had, we enjoyed each other's company. I mean, there was no ideas of going down the aisle or anything like that because we had just been dating each other for maybe about, I want to say 4 to 6 months. It was several years ago, so I don't quite remember. And he had a job working for a company as well. It paid much better than mine. It provided more benefits and everything else. He had been there a number of years. Matter of fact, it was one of the top companies in the Hampton Roads region, so he was making good money and he was doing very well. But he is a very generous, very nice guy, very affectionate and everything. We enjoyed each other's company. So we had a meeting before the termination, I want to say about 2 or 3 weeks before, when they kind of broke down as to what was going on. So those 2 weeks was kind of stressful for me. And, every time I went into work, I'm thinking in my mind, well, maybe they'll change the deal. Maybe they won't let me go or anything else. This was back when I went ahead and put all my eggs in one basket in regards to a job. I didn't have the mentality that I do now. So, But bottom line is that when they went ahead and moved the shifts and everything over, I was one of the people that didn't make it. I would say less than half of us even made it to the other 2 shifts because a couple of people just went ahead and moved on, and then the rest of us who didn't make it, we didn't make it. And I did try to find work within them 2 weeks, and then eventually I wound up working for temp services for a little while, but then I wound up just going back home to Georgia. And I'm glad I did at that point because my father needed my assistance at the time. But the thing is I called the fella because when all this was going on and I mentioned to him about the job, he was like, okay, maybe things will work out and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Just a general conversation because nothing had gone down yet. And the minute that I called him and told him that they let me go and that I didn't have a job anymore, all of a sudden he had so many things to do with his kids. All of a sudden he's working overtime and doesn't have time. He would see me 3-4 times a week, and then all of a sudden that dropped down to 1 time a week. It's like it's hard to get on the phone. Calls going to voicemail. Almost immediately after the time I told him I lost my job. So I'm going to tell you what was going through his head. He was thinking, oh Lord, she lost her job, so she going to want me to pay all her bills. I didn't open my mouth and ask that man for a damn thing. But the assumption was made, oh, well, she ain't got no job. I can't roll with that because, see, I got to have somebody with a job. See, these are the things that a lot of these people think. And it hurt me at that time because I'm thinking to myself, wow, it's like, so what? I lost my job. I had other skills. And he didn't know I had already signed up with a temp agency to do some work with them. The point is that he had been around me long enough to know what my mindset was and what I was going to do. I wasn't going to bum on anybody. He already knew that. Because, the little studio apartment that I was in, I was paying for it. I never once asked him for any money to help me pay my bills. Never once. Where I was at, it was a studio apartment where everything was included, and I paid that bill. And if I needed to borrow anything, I wouldn't go to him because I didn't know him long enough and I didn't feel it was my place to ask him that. We didn't know each other long enough for me to turn around and say, pay my rent, pay my bills. I was raised differently than that. So I never asked him for that type of help at all. If he gave me anything or did anything, it was because he chose to. It wasn't because I was sitting up here whining about it or making it a condition of him having company with me. Oh, if you want to be with me, you got to pay for my hair. Oh, if you want to be with me, you got to take care of my nails. You got to take care of my phone bill. You got to take care. No, it wasn't anything like that because I wasn't taught to behave that way. It wasn't his responsibility. But it just threw me for a loop that he made himself immediately not available. Didn't try to play it off or anything. All of a sudden, he was hard to reach. Didn't want to come by. Didn't do anything. Dropped me like a hot potato. So I found out later on, there was, my brother works for a radio station at a prominent HBCU, and he does gigs on the side, and he had a little gig that he was doing at one of the local clubs, and he told me a few weeks later he saw the guy in there just partying it up. Like, okay. He's like, yeah, I saw him. He was there having a good old time. Okay. So I say this to say this, people. When it comes to money, you don't know what a person's mindset is. There was no discussion as to what I needed. Wasn't even asked if I needed anything. Like, oh, okay, wow. Man, that's too bad. But you'll be all right. And that was the last really deep conversation we even had because most of the time when I called, if he did pick up the phone, he was on the way somewhere. Well, all of a sudden, you got to do mandatory overtime. All of a sudden, you got problems with your kids and your baby mama. All of a sudden. So I just say this to say this, people. Be very careful. When it comes to money, you think you know a person, but when the rubber meets the road, you see what the truth is. That's a form of superficiality. He placed value on me based on how much income I could generate. So let's just say in an alternate universe, if we went on ahead and proceeded and got together. Because of that mentality, I would have been stuck trying to pull my weight with him all the time just to keep his affection. That would have been number one criteria. I don't need that kind of pressure. Now, I'm not talking, this does not apply to people who are chronically lazy, can't keep a job because they don't check themselves or their attitudes. They ain't got nothing to do with you. I'm talking about regular people who work a job and due to circumstances beyond their control that they wind up losing their job. The same way that somebody hired you to do that job, they'll hire you to do something else. And I've been many places since then. So it's not a problem. So if you are temporarily going through something where you did lose a job due to a layoff or a missing shift or a company closed down, not because of your own behaviors or habits, but because of something that the company did, but you did everything the best you could, Pay attention who you have around you, and pay attention to the behaviors of the people that you had around you before you lost your job. Because there's going to be one or two people that's going to act a little crazy. You don't need these people in your life. Now, I went on and minded my own business. Like I said, I took some time shortly thereafter and went down to Georgia to help my father, which was good. I needed to get out the environment for a little while because things were a little slow. I did have a part-time offer that was given to me before I went to see my father, but unfortunately I couldn't come back to Hampton Roads to do it because when I went down to see my father and what he was going through, it was a little bit more serious than what I was informed that it was. So I needed to stay there a little bit longer. 2 weeks turned out to be several months because of what I was told wasn't what I saw. And this is why it's important for you, if you have a situation going on with someone you love, don't take it at face value what other people are saying is going on. If you have the inclination to go see what's going on with your own two eyes, go do it. Because 9 times out of 10, a lot of people, and unfortunately it's true, when you're dealing with family, if you don't live at home and you're dealing with family members and you ask them what's going on, 9 times out of 10, they're going to paint a picture that's better than what it is. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. Trust your instincts, because I'm glad I did go down there and check into things for myself to see for myself. I don't know if I even want to talk about that right now. I don't think I'm in a position to. Maybe somewhere down the line, maybe some years later, I don't know, but not right now. But the thing is that when you're dealing with people, and they give you all this love and attention and everything else and make you think that you're a great person, you may not know the reason why they're really doing it. You're thinking that they're doing it because they like you, but they don't care about you. They care about what you have. Common sense didn't tell this dude, oh, she'll get something. He told me that, yeah, you'll get something else, but he didn't believe it. He was just saying that to get me off the phone. I said to myself, man, I wasted this time with this clown. Mad at myself, mad at the world and everything else. It's like, okay, you know what, take some time off because you ain't in no position to be dealing with nobody right now, and you're not in a good headspace. You still kind of fucked up right now. Between the job and between him dumping you, you fucked up in the head right now. And that's exactly what I was. And it happens to us, and it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. Ain't nothing wrong with that. If something bad happens to you, you can't be walking around with a fake smile on your face. Your livelihood has just been jeopardized. You got every right to be upset. Now, don't be upset to the point where you turn around and you do something crazy. But I'm just saying, as a person on the inside, you have a right to feel the way you feel. And if you got a whole bunch of people around you that's trying to get you to suppress your feelings about it, and say, oh, well, it's not a big deal and da-da-da. Okay, that's great. They might be trying to encourage you, but it's just the initial shock. You got to process that. Process the initial shock. So I just say this to say this. Be careful when you're involved with people and pay attention to what they're doing. Because this is a classic case of finding out who is there for you when you're down. Now, since I've been back to Hampton Roads, I don't know if the guys around haven't tried to look them up or anything else, because I'm not the type of person who look up exes when I go back into town. I don't. If I run into them, I run into them because they're exes for a reason. That's just the way I feel. I be civil and I be kind, but I'm not trying to be buddy-buddy with anybody that I had a broken relationship with. No, not interested. So just be careful. Be mindful, pay attention to your gut instinct. If something is wrong, go with it. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. Peace.